Recently, I left Brazil and went to the UK to visit some friends. I think the UK is a great country, and I actually lived there for quite a few years. But I was a bit shocked on my visit on how much the UK has changed, and also having lived in Brazil now for many years, I was a bit shocked by some of the differences between Brazil and the UK. So I thought I'd do a video on the things that I noticed on this trip. The first thing I noticed was a few signs that maybe the UK economy isn't as strong as it used to be. So driving through London and some other big cities, you can see that lots of stores have closed with big real estate signs in the windows saying to let, looking for a new tenant. And I went to a couple of shopping malls as well, and that's a pretty depressing state as well, with lots of stores closing in the shopping malls as well. And comparing that to Brazil, yeah, I guess in Brazil it's happening a bit as well, but not to the same extent that it's happening in the UK. And in the shopping malls, I mean, shopping malls in Brazil are still very popular. I mean, if you go there at the weekend, they're always very busy. Seems like Brazilians, they love to go to shopping malls at the weekend and just kind of walk around the shopping mall with their family and so on. So the shopping malls are still, I think, doing pretty well in Brazil. That's definitely not the case in the UK. And then also another thing is the number of homeless people as well on the streets in the UK. Because I definitely don't remember seeing so many homeless people on the streets when I was living in the UK. I mean, yeah, it's still not to the same extent that you have here in Brazil. So, I mean, here in Brazil, the number of homeless is definitely still a lot higher than in the UK. But my impression is that's definitely something that's increasing in the UK. And then if you read the news, they say that the UK economy is slowing down. So GDP growth has been declining. And they give many reasons for it. So they mention Brexit, the fact that the UK left the European Union. They also mention taxes rising, and so businesses and rich individuals are investing less in the country. There's also been a bit of political instability as well recently in the UK. But you've also got global trends like, you know, people just buying more things online, so stores can't compete, and also technology and AI taking over jobs. So I mean, there are many factors that have contributed to how the UK economy is at the moment. But there's still lots of wealth in the UK and lots of really nice areas. And every time I visit the UK, I make sure that I visit London and some smaller towns and cities on the outskirts as well. Another thing I noticed was how expensive it is in the UK. So I mean, I walked past a few real estate agents and I look in the windows and house prices. I mean, they're crazy. So they say that the average cost of a home in the UK is £269,000, which is $360,000. So I mean, that doesn't sound too bad, you know, comparing it to the States and some other European countries. But that is an average figure. And if you look in the London area, for example, the average cost of a home there is £675,000, which is $900,000. But to be honest, you don't get that much for that amount of money. You probably get a small apartment or a small terraced house or something. If you want a more spacious house in London or in the outskirts, then you're looking at well over £1 million. And only if you leave the south of England and you look in the north of England or Scotland or Wales or somewhere, their prices are lower. So I mean, in the northeast of England, there the average price of a home is £194,000, which is $260,000. So yeah, house prices in the UK are pretty crazy. And then I also noticed that when I went to restaurants as well, I mean, it's practically impossible to spend less than £30 at a restaurant, serving a simple meal, a drink, and then tipping the waiter a bit. And that always came to over £30, which is $40. I mean, yeah, if you go to a fast food restaurant, there you can spend less. By going to a normal restaurant or a pub, prices have definitely gone up a lot. And that shocked me a lot because I'm used to spending like $10 for a nice meal here in Brazil. But yeah, I thought the prices in restaurants were crazy high in the UK. But other things like a mobile phone, a cell phone, a laptop, and some other electronics, they're definitely cheaper in the UK compared to Brazil. But saying that, a lot of these electronics are even cheaper in the US. So it seems like companies get away with charging more in the UK than they can in the US. And I'm not sure if there's some tariffs as well and some other costs like transportation. But yeah, I did notice that you can get better deals in the US compared to the UK. And then another thing I noticed was that crime seems to have increased in the UK as well. If you read the news, it's a bit confusing because some sources say that total crime has gone down, but then other sources saying crime has gone up. So it's a bit confusing. But one thing that's definitely going up, and which I noticed, is that less serious crime is definitely on the increase. So they say here, for example, shoplifting has increased by 36% over the last year, and theft from individuals up 18%. And that's something that I noticed because I went into a relatively small supermarket, and there was this altercation between this guy trying to leave the supermarket and the security guard. So I think it was some sort of shoplifting. I mean, I didn't really investigate too much, but there was something going on there. And if you read the newspapers, they talk a lot about how shoplifting has increased, and then also theft of mobile phones. So you got these gangs, and they seem to use electric bikes, and then they have hoodies and hats on to hide their faces, and then they kind of just cycle around, find someone who's talking on the mobile, a bit distracted, and then they just go in, steal the mobile phone, and then cycle off really quickly. So that also seems to be something that's increasing a lot. And yeah, crime levels are still a lot lower than they are here in Brazil. But yeah, talking to people, they're definitely aware of an increase in these types of crimes. And yeah, talking to some of my UK friends, they say that they're a lot more worried about, walking around talking on their mobile phones when they're in London, which you definitely need to be careful about when you're walking in big cities in Brazil. But it seems now that this is also the case in London and some of the other cities in the UK. But one good thing about the crime here in the UK is that, in general, firearms aren't really used that much. Well, in Brazil, you have to be very careful because they have a lot more access to firearms in Brazil. But saying that, I walked around London and some other towns and cities, and it was perfectly fine. So yeah, you just have to be a bit mindful that sometimes the news can exaggerate things a bit. And then another thing was the weather in the UK. So when I was there, I think I had about 2 days of sunshine. The rest of the time, it was kind of grey, overcast skies. So I mean, it's autumn now, so it's to be expected. But still, it was a bit of a shock to see day after day this kind of grey skies and not seeing the sun much. But one good thing about the climate in the UK is that it's a lot less humid than it is in the south of Brazil, because that is something that I really don't enjoy about living here in Brazil. Because the high humidity here in the south, it kind of makes the hot summers even hotter, and then the relatively cold winters feel even colder. And then you have the problems with humidity inside the house as well, with things getting moldy, with things like clothes and some furniture can get a bit moldy as well. So that is a very good thing about the climate here in the UK. So I mean, I guess it's impossible to have a country with a perfect climate, that's for sure. And then driving around in the UK, so I mean, it did take a couple of minutes for me to switch my brain around and remember to drive on the left-hand side of the road. I mean, it's not that difficult when you've got other traffic on the road, because then you just follow them. But now and again, when you're driving on a road and there's no cars at all, then my brain can get a bit confused sometimes about which side of the road I should be driving on. And also looking at the cars driving around in the UK, they're very different to the cars in Brazil. So you have a lot more German cars on the road. So Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Porsche, and also British cars like Jaguar, Range Rover as well. So you see a lot more of those on the road in the UK than you do in Brazil. And then also just in terms of electric cars as well. I mean, there's so many electric cars now in the UK. So I mean, I'd say over half the people I met when I was over there had electric cars, full electric cars. Okay, that's definitely not the case in Brazil yet. I mean, you are starting to see quite a few Chinese electric cars, but the number of electric cars in the UK is at a totally different level. And then another difference between the UK and Brazil are the homes and how they're built. So yeah, when I visited one of my friends and went to their home, there's so many things that you just don't see in a Brazilian home. So I mean, I think the majority of homes in the UK are made of bricks, but these are solid bricks, and they're not painted or anything on the outside. Compared to Brazil, where they usually use hollow bricks and then they put concrete on the outside and then paint it. So yeah, the appearance of homes in the UK are very different to Brazil. And then inside, again, some big differences there. So the Brits like to use carpet a lot on the floors, which Brazilians usually don't. In Brazilian houses, usually it's tiles. I mean, I personally like both. I think tiles in the kitchen, bathroom, hallway is pretty good. But then in the living rooms and bedrooms, I kind of like having carpet in those rooms. And then also the windows, they're usually double glazed or triple glazed in the UK compared to single glazing in Brazil. And then a lot of windows have this grid design as well, which I think looks really nice, which I don't think I've ever seen in Brazil. And then you have your central heating in the homes, so your gas boiler and the radiator, which again isn't very common in Brazilian homes. But then on the other side, it's very rare to see air conditioning units in British homes. So yeah, usually in British homes, yeah, nice and cozy and warm in wintertime, but then in summertime, if it gets really hot, which doesn't happen every summer, then you might suffer a bit with the heat because you don't have any air conditioning. While in Brazilian homes, usually it's the opposite. Nice and cool in summertime with the air conditioning, but then you might suffer a bit in wintertime because the air conditioning can't heat the house as well as central heating. And then going into the bathroom as well in the UK, there being no bins next to the toilet to throw your toilet paper. And then you have a normal shower. In the shower, there's no electric showers or anything. It's very rare to see electric showers in the shower like you have in Brazil. So yeah, lots of differences between the homes as well, between these countries. And also another thing walking around, especially in London, that hits you is how multicultural London is in the UK. So I mean, when you take the tube in London, you can hear at least 10 different languages being spoken, and not just European languages, from all over the world. And that mix of cultures is definitely something you don't experience that much in Brazilian cities, which I think is a really nice thing about the UK. When I was sitting on the tube with my daughter, we're playing the game of can you guess the languages that are being spoken next to you? Because we were hearing German, French, Spanish, Polish, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, and in particular Brazilian Portuguese. We did spot quite a few Brazilians in London as well, Swedish as well. So that's definitely a really cool thing about the UK. Okay, so I hope you liked my video about my little trip to the UK and some of the things I noticed there. I'm now back in Brazil, so next week I'll be back to doing more videos about my life here in Brazil. So if you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe. If you've got any questions or anything, leave in the commentary below. So thanks for watching, until next time.